Before we get into session 3, a quick recap of what has happened so far in session 1 and 2. So we started with how Valmiki Maharshi got this amazing boon from Lord Brahma that he will be able to visualize the entire Ramayana story as if he is within the character. So he's seeing the story from all the characters sitting inside them. So what they are feeling, what they are thinking while they are doing their actions, everything will be known to Valmiki. And using this uh, boon, Valmiki Maharshi has started the Ramayana Kavyam. So in session 2, we saw how the city of Ayodhya was described as being such a great city. And we also saw what the caste system was back then as Dvijas, right? So, unlike today, where we call people as Brahmins or Kshatriyas, etc., based on the family into which they are born, this system was not meant to be a blood lineage, but it was more meant to be basis the kind of knowledge that the person is willing to seek. And Dvija, the word itself means that the person is reborn under a guru, right? Uh, the acceptance of a student by a guru is a very big thing back then. It is a rare event, uh, and that actually Upanayanam, which is a very popular function that we do nowadays, Upanayanam back in those days marked this event where a student is now accepted by a guru. That guru could be his own father, it could be someone else, but Upanayanam marked that event, and therefore it is called a very important event in a person's lifetime, right? So then we also touched upon the great king Dasharatha, who ruled over the Koshala and the entire world from the city of Ayodhya. We reminded ourselves how a great warrior he is, and the kind of people that lived in their kingdom. No one was distracted, no one was depressed, no one was jealous, and so on and so on. And we also saw that he had 8 ministers and a couple of very excellent rishis to counsel him through his kingship. So all is well for King Dashratha, except that he didn't have children. So we saw how he decided that he will perform a yagna. He performed the Ashwamedha yagna, and later he also came to know that he needed a special uh, Purohit who can perform the Putra Kameshti. He needed a certain attributes. So therefore, they went and they pleaded Rishyasringa Maharshi to come from the Anga Raja kingdom, and on him coming in, the whole yajna was performed very well. And while the yajna came to an end, all the gods sat there and they were waiting for their share of the yajna or the havis, which they would directly accept in those days. We also saw that, and we then spoke about how all the devatas were seated there, and the main topic was Ravana, and everyone was asking Brahmadeva how they can come out of this mess, how they can defeat, who will defeat Ravana, right? And Brahma made it clear that he had a boon, and only a man or a monkey can defeat him, and no one else. At this juncture, Lord Vishnu appeared over there, and after praying to him, everyone pleaded him to kind of uh, take a form of a man and end this reign of Ravana. Right. So that is where we ended session 2. today in session 3, we will go further into the story. So, session 3 starts with Vishnu now ready to take the avatar of Lord Rama. So, I think this word avatar, avataram, it's very common. We keep hearing it. Dasavatara. We say Lord Vishnu had 10 avatars. So, what does that mean? Right? I mean, obviously, literally, the word means avatar means to descend downwards. So, in that sense, it means that God is coming from his loka down to bhuloka, and he's taking some form. That's what the word literally means. But um, how should the kids imagine this? Like, there is Lord Vishnu sitting in his abode in Vaikuntham. I think this picture a lot of us have seen, right? He's lying down on that Sheshnag, the splendid serpent, and there is Lord Lakshmi at his feet. Brahmadeva has come out of his Nabhi, or the navel, right? And he's holding a Padmam or a lotus, and his eyes are closed. He has a Sudarshan Chakra and a conch on his other two hands. This is a very popular image that we all know about Lord Vishnu. So what happens, like when this Lord Vishnu takes an avatar of Lord Rama? Does it mean that he gets up from this place and he vanishes from here, and he comes to earth as Lord Rama? So when this question is asked, a lot of people have given very good examples on how this actually happens. So the great Kavi Kalidasa is given a very nice example, a simple example to explain this. So let's say there is a flower on a tree, and it's a very, very fragrant flower. Now the fragrance of the flower is being carried away by the wind, and someone seated maybe 5 feet or 10 feet away is able to smell that fragrance. Does that mean that the fragrance of the flower is lost? Absolutely not. So no matter how much wind keeps coming through, the fragrance of the flower still remains. So you are able to smell it from 5 feet away. Even if you go near the flower, you pluck it, you take it somewhere else, and you smell it, that fragrance is still there. In a similar way, Lord Vishnu has taken the avatar of Lord Rama. Doesn't mean that Lord Vishnu is absent from Vaikuntha or wherever else he is. So an avatar is, in another way to put it, is probably um, a part of that energy, a part of that energy with those attributes, with those characteristics, with the nature of the energy not changing, but now it is amassing a different life form. It is getting into a different life form. So that is avatar. Um, this is what we all do when we before we perform pujas. I'm sure you've all performed pujas like Ganesh Chaturthi and Satyanarayana Vratam and various other pujas, right? So the Purohit comes to our home, and before starting the puja, there are certain mantras that he recites, and this is a ritual that is called Prana Pratishta. So, for example, very famous in all our pujas, down south at least, you take a ball of turmeric, you mix some water into it, you make turmeric into a ball, and you call that as Vinayaka, right? Haridra Ganapati, Haridra Vinayaka. So how did Vinayaka come into that small ball of turmeric? So that's called Prana Pratishta. So we are not saying that Vinayaka is in this ball of turmeric, so he is not anywhere else. That's not our intention. What we are saying is the energy that he resembles, the energy form that he is, we are requesting a part of that to become part of this object that we have placed in front of us, so that we can actually worship something which is infinite in a form that we can see. So similarly, an avatar here is that. And so moving on, So the yajna ended, and towards the end, a being emerged from the sacrificial fire, as per the story, and he was carrying a vessel, right? It's a payasam or a pudding or however you call it. Um, he's carrying this vessel, and this vessel was handed over to King Dasharatha because he was the person who was actually getting the yajna done. And this person who emerged from the fire, it is said he had a red face and he was as high as a mountain. So it's unlike the picture that you see here. Imagine a huge person coming out of the fire who's as tall as the mountain and he has a red face. There are many other descriptions on how his hair is, and he had whiskers, he had yellow lion like hair, majestic looking, broad chested. Um, so, very stunning figure. So he said, I have been sent here by Brahma, and you have obtained this payasam as a result of the worship that you offered. Now, this is a very simple part of the whole Ramayana story, which we all know. But here, I'm sure if you have been watching very keenly, here a question comes to the reader. What's the question? I'll just pause for a couple of seconds to give you a chance. When the person said, I have come here on the instruction of Lord Brahma to give you this payasam, what is the question that comes to our mind? Just give you a second here. Okay, to those of you who have got the same question that I did, as we already said, all the devatas are seated right there, waiting for their, um, offering, right? And Lord Brahma is sitting there himself. So does it make sense? Like Lord Brahma is right there. King Dasharatha can see him. Why can't Brahma directly just give this blessing to Dasharatha that, hey, okay, here you go, you will have sons? Or he himself can hand over this vessel. Why go through this whole elaborate process? What's the logic behind this, right? So I will just explain this very small, in a very subtle way and in a very summarized way, without digressing too much from the story. Digressing. Yeah. So, see, gods and human beings are no different in the sense that even gods, as per this Sanatana Dharma or this whole system that we are in this whole world in which this story is happening. If you remember in session one, we spoke about how this is happening in a different yuga where the average lifespan is 10,000 years and so and so and so. In that story of where this is happening, in that system, the Vedic system, human beings live in this world. They come with a certain baggage from their previous life, certain good deeds that they have done, certain bad deeds that they have done. They all carry that. It's called Sanchita Karma. It's like karma that you have in a bag before you are born. And you act as per, your actions are as per that. And then you then move on to your next life. If you do a lot of good, and if your last thoughts are about something at the next level, you probably take a better life form the next time. So I mean, as per us, as per this Vedic system, even a rock is a living soul. And rock, there are many stories where a rock becomes a cow becomes a bird then becomes a human being, the human being then attains salvation or reaches God, etc. Right? So everything around us is a life form, and this life keeps recycling. So now, in this cycle of one life form to another life form to another life form, even devatas are part of this. So a human being can become a god. A god can, after his lifespan in his loka is over, he then takes another life form. So Devatas and human beings are no different. But yes, Devatas, they live in a different world and they are having certain powers to give boons to other people. But they cannot do it by their own will and whims and fancies. They need an exchange. So, what is the exchange here? Uh, a tapasya or a yajna that is performed by a human being or whoever for that matter is an offering to the gods, and the gods in return they can give whatever the person is wishing if everything has been performed as per the guidelines. So this is a contract that is there between these worlds. So hence Lord Brahma just cannot go and give something to King Dasharatha even though he's right there. But because Dasharatha has performed this yajna to the fullest possible accuracy and with more importantly with the right intentions in mind, with the sincerity in mind, with the proper belief in mind. These are the three things for God to come and give you something. First, you need to have the right intention. The right from your perspective, it could be bad, wrong for someone else. Then you should need to have the perseverance. You need to have the right interest in the involvement in what you're doing, and you need to believe 100% that this whatever I am doing, yes, this is gods are actually receiving this is not something that I am doing and I'm not exactly sure if this will happen or not. So Dasharatha is full of all those qualities. So this person has come out and he has given the vessel. After receiving this vessel, very happy, he gave half to Kaushalya, who is his first wife. Then out of the remaining half, he gave another half of that, which is 1/4, to Sumitra. Then out of the remaining 1/4, he gave another half, which is 1/8 to Kaikeyi. Then the remaining 1/8, he gave it to Sumitra again. So Sumitra received it twice, Kaikeyi got it once, and Kaushalya got it once. So Kaushalya half, Sumitra 1/4 plus 1/4, and Sumitra got 1/4 once and 1/8 once, and Kaikeyi got 1/8 of it once. So all put together, the vessel was finished, and the king was obviously very delighted because he was now going to be a proud father. So now, while Lord Vishnu decided to come as Lord Rama, Brahma also instructed all the other devatas to create their own small avatars in the world in the form of monkeys, because as Ravana's boon said, uh, man or monkey are the only two beings who will be able to defeat me. Now, mind you, like Ravana is not a weak person. Even without the boon, he was impossible to touch. He was a staunch devotee of Lord Shiva, and he was such a learned person, and he was a superb warrior. He had a huge army. He had so many magical weapons with him. Even without this boon, it was almost impossible to kill him. Now, with this boon, it became near to impossible. So, just because you are a man or a monkey doesn't mean that you just go there and immediately he'll get scared. And that's not the point at all. So Rama will need a lot of help, and Lord Brahma knows this. So he asked the devatas to do the needful. So Indra created uh, an amsha. They call it the amsha in Sanskrit. It's like amsha is like a part of you, right? So Vali from Indra, Sugriva from the sun god, Sushena from Varuna, Hanuma, or so we all know Lord Hanuman, from Vayu, Mainda and Dvivida from the Ashwini Devatas, Jambavan from Brahma. So Jambavan was already there. He actually comes out from Lord Brahma long ago. So Jambavan was already there. Neela from Agni, Gandhamadana from Kubera, Nala from Vishwakarma, and Tara from Brihaspati. So I have taken some of the notable ones, but there are thousands of monkeys and bears that start taking birth as soon as the vessel was handed over to Lord Dasharatha, not as soon as Rama was born. So even before Rama was born, as soon as the vessel was handed over, all these life forms they appeared on earth. So, and then finally, 6 seasons, that is almost a year later, from the completion of the yajna and having the paisam on the 12th month of Chaitra Masam, on the ninth day, which is a Navami, right, with Punarvasu as the star or the nakshatra, our beloved Lord Rama was born to Kaushalya, Lord Vishnu himself, right? So such an important event. Uh, as we go through the story, we'll realize what what a what a guy, what a personality this person is. So, and then subsequently, Kaikeyi and Sumitra also gave birth to sons. So Kaikeyi gave birth to one more male child, and Sumitra gave birth to twins. And Vashishta Maharshi, who was there, he named these kids. So, what's in a name, right? Not much, but in the Vedic system, sound is everything. So, the creation of this entire universe happened due to sound. So, even in the modern science, we call it the Big Bang. It's indicating some sound. We don't call it the big light, right? So, even now we modern science also tells us that there is a certain vibration in all objects around us, right? And sound is a fundamental expression of energy when universe is created. In the Vedic system, we call it as how uh, Mahashiva, he sounded his damarukam, and the basic sounds emerged from which the entire universe started taking shape. So sound is a very significant thing in the Vedic system and in Sanskrit. So we have something called as bijaksharas, like root sounds which take the form of letters, and these are considered very auspicious. So although they are just letters, each letters have carry a lot of meaning, and when uttered together in a certain combination, they can invoke a certain type of energy. Because as we just said, sound is energy, and this is the whole concept behind mantras. Why do we utter mantras in only Sanskrit? That's because when that particular sound is uttered in a certain particular combination in a certain way, that kind of invokes a certain energy which is required for that particular puja, right? Uh, so Rama, right? Ra means light and Ma means Atma. So someone who is searching uh, and moving towards his inner Atma, or a constant search for his inner soul, that is Rama. Rama also has the meaning of one who is so pleasing. Ramayati iti Ramaha is what uh, is very popular. So Rama literally also means one who is so pleasing. Then the Kaikeyi's son, the second son, was named Bharata. Bharata is one who bears, and also one who is in a constant quest for knowledge. Uh, as the story progresses, we realize how apt these names were. Obviously, Vashishta knew everything while he was naming them. Lakshmana and Sumitra, sorry, Lakshmana and Shatrughna, the other two brothers, they were born to Sumitra. So they were twins. Lakshmana and Shatrughna were twins. Um, so Lakshmana means one who is having a lot of riches with him. So these riches are the not that he has a lot of money or anything, but he has uh, obedience, he has devotion, he has loyalty, and these are the real riches he has. So that is why he was named Lakshmana. And Shatrughna, one who conquers enemies. So I mean, we all know the Ramayana, and Shatrughna, although he's there in the story, there isn't much mention of him killing a lot of enemies or him participating in the war. So why did he be named as Shatrughna, one who conquers enemies? So here we are talking about enemies, not the enemies outside, but the enemies inside all of us, like anger, like greed, like jealousy, right? These are the enemies inside of us which disturb us, right? So Shatrughna was one who would conquer all these things as time proceeds. So that's how all these four brothers were named, and King Dasharatha was so happy. Four radiant sons, and Lord Rama, like it is said that once you look at his face, you cannot look away. Uh, it was so pleasing to the eyes, and that's where we kind of stop here for this session. So, all right. So, I hope you enjoyed this session. So, do reflect back on the various topics that we touched upon, and I'll see you in the next one.